here was very clear evidence of what people were doing, many, many thousands of years ago, some of the first peoples to inhabit the Americas, and we're seeing sort of a time capsule of their life then.
It's really hard for me to think that 2 years ago we would discover something like this, and much less I'd be sitting here telling anyone that we'd found a flooded prehistoric mine, but there it is.
My name is Fred DeVos. I'm originally from Canada. I've been living here in Mexico for more than 23 years and have dedicated most of that time to the exploration and documentation of the area's underwater caves.
My name is Sam Meacham. I'm originally from the United States, and I've lived in this area since 1994, and for the majority of that time I've been involved in the exploration and mapping and more importantly education about the aquifer for this area.
The formations that we see from the ceiling, on the floor, in the form of stalactites, stalagmites, proves that these caves were once dry.
There's probably at least 10, if not more, human skeletons that have been found within the caves, not to mention elephants, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, a kind of a zoological collection of Pleistocene fauna and megafauna. So we knew people had been going into these caves, but we'd never really seen direct evidence of them being there other than their remains.
So we were approached in early 2017 by the original explorers of this cave to help them with mapping and documentation of what they had found. And from there went on to explore almost 6 kilometers more.
Pretty much like I'd say any dive that we do, we're always just going out to further the knowledge base of the extent of these cave systems, never really with the expectation. I mean, we always have the hope that we're going to find something, but we never know what we're going to find.
So during the exploration of new passages in Sagitario, Sam and myself began to see damages to the cave. And what I mean here is broken speleothems, misplaced rocks, things that didn't seem natural to us. Because it was original exploration and no divers had been in this passage before, we were convinced that we were onto something very unique.
So as we're exploring, we're going through a fairly large passageway that ended in an air dome, and we came up into the air dome, very beautifully decorated, lots of pretty speleothems, and we went across the air dome and down the other side, and there was a fairly major restriction on the other side.
But through the restriction, we felt that the flow of water was continuing. This is usually a very good sign to explorers, meaning that there must be cave beyond the restriction.
Fred told me to hold, and then he went down feet first through the restriction. He indicated to me that it was okay to pass, and so I went through, and that's really when we first saw the overwhelming evidence, irrefutable evidence of human manipulation of this cave.
What we found on the other side was absolutely incredible. Rocks being smashed.
An abundance of charcoal, which could have been naturally washed in, but in the quantity that we're seeing it, in the places that we're seeing it, we're thinking this is probably evidence of fires.
Boulders too large for one person to carry, piled up on top of each other.
Rock cairns marking the center of the passageway in a lot of these areas that we're diving through.
It was very clear after spending time in what we named the mine, or La Mina, that what these early visitors to the cave were after was the sediment.
People are literally breaking the floor, piling rocks up to get at the sediment from down below.
And not a little bit of it. Tons, literally tons of sediment had been removed from this cave. We are not archaeologists, but immediately we realized the importance of La Mina in terms of archaeology. And we really hope that everything we do can help archaeologists to answer important questions about the first inhabitants of the Americas.
Any scientific study these days is multidisciplinary. It requires a great deal of collaboration between ourselves, the divers that can go into this environment, and the non-diving scientists that we work with. And so one of the greatest obstacles is just that, is that the majority of scientists that we work with will never be able to go into this environment. So what can we do? What technology can we employ that best enables us to take non-diving scientists into this world? Underwater cave archaeology is very different than archaeology of a shipwreck, let's say, in that a shipwreck falls arbitrarily on the bottom of the ocean floor, whereas in the case of underwater caves, the cave itself is very much a part of the story of how people traveled through this. So we really have to map the whole thing to tell the entire story. So the map is really the critical first step that we do to bring scientists into this world. Another technique that we've employed in Sagitario is that of photogrammetry. And photogrammetry is something that's existed for a number of years, but with digital cameras now and with better computing power, what we can actually do is create three-dimensional models from photographs. This is really an incredible opportunity to allow non-diving scientists to explore and observe within the cave and then get back to us with potentially specific tasks or areas they'd like us to revisit to collect a sample or take more higher resolution photographs to document that site. Maps are wonderful. The 3D models that we can create are incredible. But what really just literally fell into our laps in May of 2019 was the opportunity to try out a 360 underwater camera. Thanks to Boxfish Research, who produces this camera, they pretty much let us have it for 2 straight weeks. And it wasn't a difficult decision to take it through the mine. And so, again, one of the greatest obstacles we have in educating people about this beautiful place that we have the privilege to go into is getting them beyond their preconceived ideas that we're a bunch of daredevils and in fact show them just how beautiful the underwater caves of this area are. And never had we experienced anything like this until we got to try out the 360 camera. In a work like this, collaboration is absolutely critical. We're very grateful to the involvement of INA, the National Institute of Anthropology and History, and their Underwater Archaeology Division. Pilar Luna and Roberto Junco really are the ones that allow us to be able to do this work and bring our expertise to bear with the rest of the scientific community. Ed Reinhardt from McMaster University and his team are really doing a great job in helping us determine sites that might need to be sampled. Brandy McDonald from the University of Missouri and her analysis of the sediment is giving credence to the fact that yes, indeed, that was what they were after. Dr. Barry Rock at the University of New Hampshire is actually taking the charcoal samples that have been found in the cave and looking at them under a scanning electron microscope and can tell us exactly what species of wood this was that was being burned in there. But we can also, from those same pieces of charcoal, get carbon dates as well from Jim Chatters of Paleoscience. And finally, the University of California, San Diego and the Cultural Heritage Engineering Initiative is really the driving force behind all of our photogrammetry in this area. And it takes a ton of computing power to put these models together. The work that they're doing out there, the truly pioneering work, bringing engineers together with artists, architects, and archaeologists is absolutely mind-blowing. So I think it's really hard for a lot of people to grasp why anybody in their right mind would do what we do. And my true hope is that in seeing the mine, from our own perspective, to connect in such a dramatic way with the first inhabitants of the Americas really is just such an overwhelmingly humbling thing to experience. And to know that those people were coming in here and working at the scale that they did to excavate this mine and bring material in so they could build fires and then break the rock and then excavate and take things out, it's absolutely beyond my comprehension. The amount of energy and time that would have taken. These people couldn't just go to the convenience store and get a nice ice cold drink at the end of the day. They had to worry about short-faced bears and saber-toothed cats and any number of other things, including just a minor scratch that could have proven to be fatal. So these people, they're living on the same planet, but in a completely different world than we are. And I have nothing but respect for what they were able to do.
Over the number of years diving caves in this area, we have seen evidence that led us to believe that humans had been in this cave before us. But we never really could prove the manipulation of caves by humans until we found La Mina.
One of the main motivations we all have is, what are we going to be telling you a year from now that we've discovered in one of these caves? The possibilities are limitless. And for me, that is absolutely one of the motivations. It's what we haven't found yet. And I'm quite sure there's even more spectacular things than what we're showing you in the mine right now.